Door latch failure on the Mark V is definitely one of the most common issues for this generation vehicle, and truth be told, this is a common VW problem across many generations. So today I'm going to show you how to install a new one, do a little bit of diagnosis, and give you guys some tips on doing it easy and right the first time. This is not a hard job, but if you don't follow the procedure properly, it can be quite a bit more work than it really has to be. When it comes to failures, the most common thing is really circuitry inside the latch itself, causing it not to register to the car properly. This can show in a number of ways, like the door that's failing doesn't lock, or when you open that door, it doesn't register inside the instrument cluster. Even the alarm randomly going off is pretty common. Before you just slap a door latch in it though, you want to do a couple of quick checks. What I like to do is lock the car and see if the door will actually lock. This doesn't have the mechanical lock like the older ones do where you can see that it's locked. So if you lock the car and pull the door and it opens, it clearly didn't work. Checking to see if the door open warning comes on in the instrument cluster when you open it is another really quick and easy way to check it. Another thing you really want to make sure you check is the wiring harness coming from the body of the car to the door itself. That's pretty easy to check. All you need to do is peel the boot back a little bit and do a quick check on the wires. If you see any wires that are chafed or sheathing missing or the wires are broken, you're going to need to make sure you get that replaced too. The tools that we're going to need for this job will be a T30, a T20 driver, a number 6 triple square, a ratchet, a trim removal tool, a pocket screwdriver. I really like to use an impact for this job. I also highly recommend a magnetic tray with a way to separate 3 different groups of bolts for when we take the outer door skin off. Now, in order to do this repair, the outer door skin actually needs to be completely removed, but first we need to remove the outer door handle. The first step to doing that is removing this trim piece on the outer edge of the door. All that is held in with trim clips, and we can pop it right off. I like to start at the bottom with our trim removal tool and just simply pry it away. Once you get it started, you can simply just work your way up. Odds are, some of the little clips will fall out. That's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. Even if they break, that's actually pretty common because they do get brittle with age. As you can see with the trim panel removed, we have access to our screws as well as this little opening right here, which is where the screw is to remove the outer door handle. This is where we're going to put our T20 driver. What I like to do is I use the logo on the screwdriver and I face that up. We need to count the turns as we rotate it counterclockwise. 12 turns out of this screw inside the door is the perfect number. If you rotate it too many, you can actually cause this piece inside the door to come apart, which makes this job quite a bit more challenging. Before you rotate any turns to get to our 12, grab the outer door handle and hold it away from the door, so like you were opening the door, and then rotate the screw 12 turns out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, as I let the door handle go, you'll notice it kind of hangs a little bit. That's good. That means we did it right. We can take our screwdriver out, take our trim tool, fish it underneath the lock, and pull the lock straight out. You may have to work a little harder to get this lock out. This one came out super easy, but you shouldn't have to really pry on it. If you run into an issue where you can't get it out, run that screw all the way back in and try the 12 turns again. Maybe somebody was in the door at some point and didn't do it correctly, but 12 turns is the key to make this come out really, really easily. Next, we're going to remove the cable that attaches the outer handle to the door latch. And that's pretty easy. That just pops right off. Next, we're going to push the handle towards the rear of the car a little bit and swing it out and away, and then rotate it back towards the front because this hook piece right here has to clear our door. Remove this T20 from behind the door handle. Next, we're going to be removing the outer door skin in order to get access to the door latch. The door skin is held on by a series of bolts along the back, the bottom, and the front side of the door. Before the first bolt comes off of the door, you need to make sure that you're organized in a way that you can keep them separate. The bolts are going to be different and they need to go back in the proper spot. If they don't go back in the right spot, you can actually do some damage to the door. You're also going to need to have the window glass up Otherwise, you won't be able to get to the latch. I like to start with the bolts on the outer edge of the door, but I always leave the very top one in and do that absolutely last right before you take the skin off. Next, take the 7 screws out of the bottom of the door skin. Then we're going to take the 6 screws out of the front side of the door. Now, before we take this very last screw out, we need to find a safe place to set the door skin. We don't want to be fumbling around trying to find a place to put it while balancing the door skin. I like to stand on the outside of the door and gently hold it up at the top and kind of lean my leg into it. That way it doesn't slip and fall and hit the ground. That will damage the door. So we'll take our final screw out. We'll set it in our tray. And now we simply pull the door skin away. Once we have the skin off, we have a ton of room to work on the door latch. What we're going to need to do is we're going to remove this purple seal at the top. It's actually functioning like a rubber band. So we'll take that off. Oh, it actually broke. So we'll set that to the side. Then this carrier piece just slides back. This is the piece where the screw is that we removed and loosened 12 turns. It rotates this collar, so if you over or underdo it, it won't let that lock cylinder release. Next, we're going to remove the 2 triple squares that actually hold the latch on. Be careful and make sure you get the bit all the way in. These are a little bit shallow, and you really don't want to strip these out. Now that our door latch is unbolted from the car, we're going to lift up and rock it away. It's still attached by the cable and the electrical connector, so we'll need to disconnect the electrical connector and then undo the cable. I just like to take a pocket screwdriver and pop it out of the channel. This is what holds the cable. Then we're going to rotate it and pull it away from the latch. Before we put our new latch in, there's a couple of things that we have to do. We have to transfer over this break-in case as well as the outer door cable. First, let's remove the cover. You can see it's held in with a series of tabs. If we get our pocket screwdriver in there, give it a nice easy twist, and push it away from the latch, it should come right off. And our third one is down here. We'll set our cover to the side. Next, we're going to transfer our cable over to our new latch. All you have to do is pull it, rotate it 90 degrees, and slide it out of the channel. We'll do the same thing to install it. Before we put our cover on, there's another key thing that a lot of people miss. We have to set the preload of this cable. There's a small spring right here, and you can see a little hook right here on the piece that attaches to the cable. We need to hook this spring into this part of the latch. This sets the depth in the handle and preloads it so that when you pull the handle, it opens properly. I usually take a pocket screwdriver, pull the spring, and set the lock arm down, and then it locks into place. You can see it latched into place right there. If you don't do this, you can still get the depth right, but the door doesn't have the proper feel. And then the first time we pull the door open, it'll pull this arm away from the spring, and you won't have to worry about it ever again. You can do this with it in the car, but it's a lot easier while it's sitting right here on the bench. Finally, we'll put our cover on. Make sure that your cable goes through the opening. We need this piece right here to go into this channel. Set it in the tabs, 1, 2, and 3. And that's it. Let's put the latch back on. On this job, installation is basically the opposite of removal, but there are a handful of things that we got to pay attention to. Let's start with putting our inner door pull cable on. This goes in that little channel there. We twist it 90 and lock the cable in up here. Let's go ahead and plug our electrical connector in. Now, there's a little square hole right here in the latch that lines up with a little hook on the door of the car. We have to rest the latch with this hole on that little hook. So we're going to swing it up and higher than it's going to sit, and then set it down, and it'll rest right there when it's properly on that little hook. You can confirm this because the holes in the door latch that are used to mount it to the door will be lined up almost perfectly. Our screws for the door latch do have some blue Loctite on them. If you want to clean them off and put some blue Loctite back on it, I'm all cool with that. You can also just go ahead and run them in, and I've never had a problem. What you're looking at here is called a witness mark. This is the marking that the bolt that holds the door latch in made on the paint of the door. You really have to get this lined up as close as you possibly can with the screw. We're gonna take our bolt, we're gonna start it, we're gonna get it almost all the way tight, then we can actually shift the door latch around a little bit to make sure that lines up as perfect as we can get it. Once you got that witness mark lined up with the bolt, go ahead and snug it down, and we'll double check and tighten the bottom one. Once we have the door latch bolted in, plugged in, and the cable connected, do a quick check and make sure you have all that before going any further. We also want to make sure that when we pull this cable, it doesn't pull the door latch. That means we do have it properly preloaded. We're going to put our door handle carrier back on, put our cable through the little hole, and install it. Now, our rubber band that was at the top broke. We'll just take another rubber band. All this really does is prevent it from falling in the door while we're installing the skin. All right, let's go ahead and put the door skin back on. We need to make sure that this portion of the skin is behind this portion of the shell of the door. Once it's lined up, take one screw and just start it at the top, and that'll help keep the door from falling off. When we're bolting the door skin up, we're gonna go in a slightly different order than we did coming apart. I like to put the door handle carrier and bolt it up first, and then go back and put all the screws in the door skin. This allows a little bit more movement and flexibility with the handle carrier as well as the door skin. So we'll take our small T20. This is another screw that it's vital that you pay attention to the witness marks that it left. We want to make sure that we get it back exactly where it came from. There is a little bit of adjustment we can make with that screw, but if we get it back where it came from, it gets it right almost every single time. So once that's lined up, we'll go ahead and snug it down. Now we'll work on putting the screws on the door skin. There are 3 different kinds of screws for this door skin. You have the ones with a thick washer and a flat end. We have the thin washer and the pointy end. And we have a thick washer with a pointy end. The screws on the back side of the door and the bottom don't really matter where they go, but the ones at the front do. If you put these long ones with the thin washer in the front, you can dimple the door skin. So make sure the screws go back where they came from. Now, I like to start all the screws on the back, the bottom, and the front by hand, and then go back and tighten them up. Now, here's where it is probably the most vital place to get the screws in the right spot. The thick washer screw with the point goes at the top. You may have to reach around the front of the door and push the skin closer. The rest of them on this front portion of the door should be the flat end and thick washer screws. And we'll go ahead and start the screws on the back side of the door. You may need to adjust the door a little bit, lifting it up or down to get these screws started. That's exactly why I like to start them all by hand, that way you don't get one tight and then have to go back and loosen it a bunch of times. Now, when you go to tighten these screws, you want to pay attention to those same witness marks that we've been talking about throughout this entire job. The closer you get it back to where it was, the more likely you're not going to have to make any more adjustments. Here is our handle. It's time to install it. There's this little rubber flap right here that when we install it, we want to make sure it's tucked into this hole. That's something I see a lot, is this sticking out. So I usually just put my finger on it, start it perpendicular to the door, rock it in, slide it back towards the back of the car, push it in, and then it'll just kind of slip right into place right inside the door. All right, next we need to take the cable that's attached to the door latch and put it in the handle. Pull it really hard and lock it in the door handle. You can see it right there. It is now locked in place. With that preload set, it usually lands somewhere roughly in the middle of that adjustment. So we got that set properly. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our lock cylinder back in. You will need to pull the handle just a little bit. Tap the lock cylinder in, tap the handle down. We're gonna take our T20 driver in the same hole. We don't care about counting turns this time. We're just gonna go ahead and tighten that screw. You'll hear a little click, and we're good. Now, don't shut the door and test this. Pull the handle. It'll be pretty hard to pull that first pull, as we pull the arm over the spring, take your T20, latch the door, and then try and open it. Make sure it opens from the outside and the inside, because if it's a problem here, it's going to be way easier to fix than trying to fix it with the door shut. So that feels good. All we have to do is we have to put our trim back on, and we're done. I have the little sticker that we took off that covers this hole. I don't know how well it's going to stick, but we'll go ahead and put it back on. There is also this little tab that sticks up on the trim piece that covers all these screws. That needs to go up and inside the trim here at the B-pillar. And for the final step, make sure the door isn't latched and go ahead and shut it. We're going to do a check, make sure all our gaps on the front side and back side line up properly. This door's pretty beat up, so it actually doesn't line up very well. But moment of truth, it opens, it closes, just like it's supposed to. Questions or comments, go down below. If you like the video, hit that thumbs up button. Shout out to FCPEuro for working with me on this entire project. If you want to see more Mark V videos, there is a playlist special for that. Links to everything we used today are down in the description. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.